Hi, I'm Chef Owen Tilley, and I want to welcome you to this week's edition of Ask the Chef. This week's question comes from Amy. Amy's one of our Facebook fans, and she wants to know, is there any seafood offerings coming up for Thanksgiving that I'd like to share? And actually, Amy, this is a great one because this one goes back to my roots of growing up on the Gulf Coast of Texas. It's an oyster stuffing. Now in the South, if it doesn't go inside the bird, we call it a dressing. But up here in the North, we call just about everything a stuffing. So if you're down south and you're saying, hey, wait a minute, that's the clarification. So let's get started on making this oyster stuffing. Now, what you're going to need 18 fresh oysters. Now, I've shucked them and chopped them and kept the juice because that oyster liquor is really going to add a great flavor to the stuffing. Now, if you don't know how to shuck oysters, go a few blogs back and I have a posting there that'll talk you right through it. Next thing you're going to need about 1.5 cups of chopped celery, a couple of cups of chopped onion, 1/2 pound of chopped bacon, some fresh thyme, some fresh sage, 1.5 cups of low sodium chicken broth, and some pre-made stuffing cubes. You can start with your own stuff by using French bread, but if you're a time saver like me, you want to go with something that's already pre-prepared. So an unseasoned stuffing cubes really works well for this. Okay, I've already got the bacon started because I want to put it in over medium heat and let the fat slowly melt away, so it's going to crisp up the bacon, and it'll also embark that flavor onto the vegetables that we're going to saute in as well. And what we're going to put next is we're going to put the celery and the onions. Let's give that a stir. I've sauteed these for about 4 to 5 minutes, just until the onions start to get translucent. You can see through them, but we don't really want to brown them because if we caramelize the onion, it's really going to give a sweet flavor, and that's going to pull away from the dish. Now that we've let those sweat down and the onions are just becoming translucent, we're going to add in our oysters real quick. Now, we're not really going to cook our oysters. What we're going to do is we're going to let the oyster juice, or that liquor that's in there, soak into the vegetables and barely start to cook the oysters, because we're going to bake this because it is a stuffing, and we don't want to overcook the oysters because they'll really become chewy and really not complement the dish at all. Now that that's in, you always want to season a little bit, so we're going to put a little bit of black pepper in here. Now we're going to use just a touch of sea salt. The oysters and the oyster liquor already have ocean water in them, so you're going to get a lot of salt out of that. But we're just going to put just a little bit more, maybe 3-4 grinds of the salt mill, if you will. Okay, so now these are done, just right, just where I want them to be. I'm going to add in the sage. I'm going to add in that thyme, just so that they barely release their oils inside of the spices, and that's going to flavor that water in there just a little bit more as well. So next, we're going to add in our stuffing crumbs and let those soak up all of those flavors I've been talking about. All right, and then last but not least, we're going to add our low sodium chicken broth over the top. Now you can use regular chicken broth if you wish, but if you do, you really want to cut down on the salt because, like I said, those oysters contain a lot of salt water in them. So I'm going to get my spoon and give this a good stir. All right, now the liquid's being soaked up and well incorporated. We want to stir just to make sure that all the ingredients are well incorporated. All right, so now we're going to take a casserole dish and put it right in. We've got our stuffing ready, placed it into the oven casserole dish, and now we're going to wrap it with a little bit of aluminum foil. And the reason that we're doing this is we want to keep the moisture in the stuffing. We don't want it to dry out. So in an oven at about 350, we're going to put it in the middle rack and we're going to let it cook for about 1/2 hour. Then we're going to take the foil off and cook it for another 10 minutes just so that the top layer gets nice and crisp on top, moist in the center, and our oysters are cooked all the way through. I'd like to thank Amy for asking about a seafood offering for Thanksgiving, and I'd like to thank you for letting me share one of the recipes I grew up with. I want you to come back next week to see what we have in store for you on Ask the Chef, and remember, you keep asking, I'll keep cooking.